Hey guys, this is our lesson for our first lesson in chapter 3, and it's called Functions. Our opener today is going to be a which one doesn't belong. We have to identify why each of these four graphs do not belong with the rest. Make sure you complete that on Canvas. Alright, our learning targets today, like always, write these down please in the notes at the top of the notes. So the first one is that I can determine whether relations are functions. Second one is I can find the domain and range of a function. And lastly, I can identify the independent and dependent variables of functions. Write down all three in your notes before you move on. Alright, keynotes here, and this page is going to get drawn up on, so you'll probably want to draw out some of this stuff first. The most important stuff here is the stuff in this text, so you want to write out all of this as well. So a relation pairs inputs with outputs. When a relation is given as ordered pairs, the x coordinates are inputs, the y coordinates are outputs. A relation that pairs each input with exactly one output is a function. So you'll want to look through each of these, and you want to decide, does everything that have an input have exactly one output? This first one, all the x values are independent, and even though that some of the y values are the same, like there's the 3 2's and the 2 0's, because all the x values are independent, this first one is a function. Because it matches that rule of each input has exactly one output. Now our next one here, 4, 8, 6, 4, 5, you'll notice that the 4 repeats twice and it goes to two different numbers. This automatically tells you it is not a function, because the input, the x value, is used the same, but it goes to a different y value. Here 4 goes to 0, here 4 goes to 3. So for the second one, this one is not a function. Alright, the third one, a little bit easier because it's already in a table format. Independent x values, but we see right here, both of these are the same input. They go to different outputs. One time it goes to 5, one time it goes to 6. This one is also not a function. And then graphically, here's another way we look at these. So inputs and outputs, again, just x and y values. So think input x, output y. We have three different inputs. They all go to a singular output. It is okay that this one has two different inputs that go to it. That's okay. But if we had one of these that went to two different items, then it would not be okay. So this last one here is a function. Just to get a little bit more examples, just as a reminder, functions, and this might be a simplistic way for each time you write it down, a function is exactly one output for each input. So, A here, we have 5 different inputs. Even though we have the same output, because they all individually go there, that's okay. So, this one is a function. For B, this says each of our inputs of 8, so if we plug 8 in, we get 0 out, and then if we plug 8 in, we get 1 out. If we plug 8 in, we get 2 out. This here is not a function. So I'm just going to cross it out to make it real simple. That one is not a function. Another graphical one here. These first two inputs each have one output, so those two parts are good. However, this input of 3 has two different outputs. And the reason why this is not a function is because we don't know what will happen. If you plug in 3, will it go to 10 or will it go to 11? Because you don't know, this one is also not a function. Alright, a graphical way to check these is something called a vertical line test. Write this down in your notes as a key thing. So vertical line test says that if you can draw a vertical line through either the dots or the line, and it only crosses once, then it's a function. If it crosses the line twice in any spot on it, then it's not a function. So for this first one over here, we could draw a vertical line, touches this first one once, touches both of these twice. You'll notice you have an x value of 2, you have 2 different y values, means it's not a function. So not. Okay? Whereas this one over here, no matter how you draw vertical lines, you never cross the actual graph line more than once, so therefore this one is a function. Again, this is another key concept, lots of notes today, but that's okay, it's the start of a lesson. So we want to be able to find domain and range of a function. A lot of times in math we'll have the same words meaning different things. So the domain is simply the input values, but it's all of the possible ones. The range is all of the possible output values. Remember that we already said that inputs are often your x values and outputs are often your y values. So domains are inputs and x values. Range is outputs and y values. Looking at this graph, if we have dots, so just straight points, we should write out each of those points, those ordered pairs. Remember that the x values are all your inputs. So here are your 4 inputs, and your outputs are what they map to. Again, this one is a function because it passes the vertical line test. A vertical line only crosses each dot once. As we continue this on, if you get a graph, so it's an entire range, so it would include all the decimal numbers and the fractions in between points, you then have to use an inequality to include those things. So if we're looking at the x values, the domains, the smallest one here is -2. It's a closed circle, so just like we learned last time, that's going to be an or equal to. That's going to go all the way up to 3. So our 2 anchor numbers are -2 and 3, and because it is a solid line, it could be any value in between there. Therefore, it's less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3. The range starts at -1, it goes all the way up to 2, and because it could be any of the decimal or fraction numbers in between, it is also closed circles and less than or equal to's. Again, a lot of notes today. Make sure you are for sure writing down the definitions of an independent variable and a dependent variable, and writing down this example here. The main thing to remember is that y values are produced by what you have for x values, because the x values are independent and the inputs, whereas the y value is the dependent and the output. You'll have to get to a point where you'll read a situation, a word problem, identify the independent and dependent variables, and then figure out what maybe the range is or the domain depending on what things you have. So this one's a little bit easier because it does give you an equation right away. Remember, inputs are x, outputs are y's. So if this is telling you that the function represents the amount of y of juice remaining after you take x gulps. So x is the number of gulps, so x is independent, and y is the dependent, because it's what depends on how many times you took gulps in that case. If you have the domain numbers, just like if you had x numbers, you simply plug those numbers into the equation to produce the y output numbers. This range is then given here. Remember, because these are ordered points, you have to list every point. If it was a graph, you would list the entire range of those points in an inequality format. Alright, here's today's homework. It's on Canvas as well. It's only 22 problems, should not take too long to finish. Big thing, remember that the retake information is the same as always. To retake the test, you need to do the review if you did not take the test, or do test corrections if you did take it. And obviously, I didn't mean to have Chapter 1 here, I meant to have Chapter 2 here. So you should, if you want to do the Chapter 2 retake, you got to redo the Chapter 1 review and redo the Chapter 1 test corrections. I want you guys to try to do this on Wednesday, December 2nd, so you got to make sure you have that meeting done by December 1st. Awesome, good luck on that homework.